What is up, Bills Mafia? Welcome in to the preview show. We are coming to you on this NFL football Week 10 Sunday. The 1 o'clock games are in the books. The 4 o'clock slate has begun. We thought we'll hang out with you. We'll talk a little Bills Broncos as we preview this game tomorrow, Monday Night Football. And this episode of Shout, as always, is brought to you by Tops Friendly Markets. Happy Thanksgiving. It's coming. Give thanks and save. Prepare for a Thanksgiving like no other with unbelievable savings on everything you need to create a memorable holiday meal. Need a turkey? How about fresh cranberries for cranberry sauce that's bursting with tangy sweetness? Tops has got it all and more for you. As you plan for your Thanksgiving menu, make Tops your destination for savings. Ryan Talbot, how are you, buddy?
Hey, I am doing well, Matt. Excited to talk Bills Broncos.
So I think the best place to start is with a couple of players that the Bills are not going to have, because against Russell Wilson in this Denver Broncos offense, I think it's interesting coming off of the game that they had a couple weeks ago, which wasn't like an explosive offensive performance by any stretch for the Denver Broncos. I felt like they did enough offensively to win a game, but that was against a Chiefs defense that had all of its parts. Playing a lot better at this stage of the season than the Bills defense has. And now going into this game, the Bills are going to be without Micah Hyde, without Christian Benford. Where does this, as you kind of start to dive into this, where do things start with the biggest concern for you?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest concern for me is, who's going to step up, especially at safety of those two positions. Obviously, the Bills made a trade for Rasul Douglas right at the trade deadline. I anticipate him having a big role in this game at one cornerback spot. I thought he played very well, considering the circumstances last week against Cincinnati. Dane Jackson had an outstanding game. So I don't, have too many concerns about the starters at cornerback. The depth is a concern in terms of what they're going to do there. But for me, it's safety. Micah Hyde out. You have Jordan Poyer, who has played some pretty good football as of late, but he's a little bit banged up too. And then you're looking at Taylor Rapp, who really has, in my opinion, been kind of a disappointing signing in free agency this year. I had high expectations for him. You look at DeMar Hamlin probably being active. Yes, you have other guys like Cam Lewis that can play at safety, obviously can play at both cornerback spots too. But for me, it's definitely that safety position where I have the most concerns. What about you, Matt?
So Benford out likely means Rasul Douglas getting a full slate of snaps in week 2 with the Bills. Now that's going to be interesting because the Bills have a bit of a quandary on their hands. Number one, they're coming off of a game where they didn't run the ball very well. So, a lot of fans wondering if this is the Leonard Fournette game where he gets elevated off the practice squad. Well, if you elevate him, you get 2. You're going to have to make a decision between Josh Norman and Jamarcus Ingram as that depth cornerback. And between those two guys, both of them have been elevated twice already. So if you elevate either for this game, then after the game, you have to make a decision whether you put them on the 53-man roster or subject them to waivers. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Ingram that gets the call up, only because he's been in the system now well over a year. If they need him to play a larger role, and who knows, maybe it ends up being both of them, and they wait for the Fournette move. I think that's very interesting. Then you look at the safety situation. I know a lot of people are excited about potentially DeMar Hamlin being active, and you mentioned it, and I think that will be a really cool moment on Monday Night Football. So much was made last week about his return to Cincinnati, and it was kind of like this. It was a bit of a downer when he got to the game and he didn't actually get his chance to play. This week, there's a good chance that he could get a chance to play. I say a good chance because, Ryan, there's a scenario, and I put it out in our Text Insider group, where it could be Taylor Rapp, who has been in this third safety situation. And I know the easy projection is to put him in its starter with Jordan Poyer, but they can go an alternate direction, and they could maybe even start not DeMar Hamlin, start Cam Lewis, who has kind of been that backup to Micah Hyde, keep Rapp in that role that he's already been in, because you mentioned it. It's been a little bit underwhelming. And then DeMar Hamlin could be that first safety off the bench.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate where the Bills are right now in terms of having to mix and match defensive talent, try to figure things out here on the fly, losing piece by piece. It feels like seemingly every week. This is a big part of why the Bills are struggling so much at this point in the season. It's why we probably each have some concerns about this team's viability and to be a playoff team in a all of a sudden very strong AFC conference.
Hmm. Um, it's funny you say that because I feel like it's fitting that we're doing this show after watching what we just did in the 1 o'clock window. Like, I think today's games were a great reminder that some of the concerns that maybe we do have about the Bills, maybe it's a bit of an overreaction, Ryan. Because if you look throughout the conference, there's been plenty of bad one-off performances here and there. I'm still not absolutely wowed with the Lamar Jackson-led Baltimore Ravens offense. To let that team led by Deshaun Watson back into that game. Listen, I know their defense is really good, but you scored 30 plus points. It wasn't just about the defense. Deshaun Watson ended up with a better game than Lamar Jackson. If you watch most of that game, that is crazy to think about. The Bengals are coming off of these explosive 2 weeks, wins over the Niners, wins over the Bills. And listen, I think the Texans are a legitimate playoff team. I tweeted, I think CJ Stroud is elite. But week to week, there's a lot of parity in this conference. And part of that reason is I think that there's so many good teams that I think on any given Sunday, I know it's the cliche, any team can win.
Yeah, you look at the AFC South, they have three teams that are all playing decent football right now. Obviously, the Colts are probably the weakest of those three teams that are have a hovering near the top of the conference because they have Gardner Minshew. They squeaked out a game against the Patriots, but Jacksonville is going to be contending for a playoff spot. And then obviously of the Houston Texans, who unbelievable job by the coaching staff there, CJ Stroud. You look at the AFC North, all four teams are in the mix there for playoff spots. At the end of the day, when it comes down to these wild card positions, you're going to need to get to 10 wins most likely. And that's going to be tough for a lot of these teams to do, Buffalo included. Just because, like you said, it's a week to week league. You have a lot of up and down play, but the Bills are going to have to hope some of these teams go cold, that they can get hot at the right time. And obviously, they're not out of it within their own division, too. Miami has shown the inability to beat contending teams, but their schedule gets a little bit softer now, where Buffalo has some tall tasks ahead.
Let's start getting into this Denver Broncos team because I want to analyze what they were able to do defensively that I think really allowed them to have the performance they did a couple weeks ago against the Kansas City Chiefs. And whenever you look at a team that goes up against a Chiefs offense and gives them problems, you start up front and you take a look at what they were able to do in terms of generating pressure. And it starts with a three-headed monster. Zach Allen's at left end. He had 7 pressures in that game. He had a sack on Patrick Mahomes. Baron Browning, the outside edge rusher, he had 6 pressures, 2 sacks, 2 hits, 2 hurries, and then Nick Bonito at linebacker. He can do a little bit of everything. Kind of goes into coverage as well. He had 9 pressures in that game, and I think to me, where we start with this offensive game plan for the Bills, they have to mitigate Denver's ability to cause pressure because that's when I feel like the turnover start. That was kind of the difference in that game.
Yeah, big. That's a big time concern for this team, and I think the offensive line play has been pretty solid this year for Buffalo. So you're hoping that they can hold up. You're hoping that they can get some blocking assignments in to keep those guys at bay. Browning is one of 2 players on the Broncos injury report this week, but neither player ended up with a designation. So they're as healthy as they come. It was Browning and Ben Powers. So they're going to have a full arsenal. They're going to be coming into this game with a lot of confidence after knocking off the Chiefs. And yes, it's one thing to defeat a division rival, a team that you know very well, a team that you play multiple, obviously 2 times every year. But this is a team that looks a lot different than the Denver Broncos team we saw early on this season. Russell Wilson has not been unbelievably, he doesn't look like the prime Russell Wilson, but he's doing a nice job of protecting the football. He's playing smart football. I think he had less than 120 passing yards against the Chiefs, but he still had 3 touchdowns in that game. He can still move a little bit with his feet, but like you said, it starts with the pressure and limiting the pressure if you're the Bills. giving Josh Allen a clean pocket, letting Josh Allen look at his top wide receivers, who as of late, obviously Stephon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid, and then surprisingly, Khalil Shakir has kind of been that next option with Gabe Davis kind of, not having a role in last week's game for whatever reason.
Jaquan McMillan is a name that Bills fans should familiarize themselves with. It really stuck out to me when I started looking into the scouting report on this Denver defense. 89.6 coverage grade in that game against the Kansas City Chiefs. When Patrick Mahomes targeted McMillan in that game, he had a 16.7 passer rating, which is wild considering who that is. 6 targets, 3 receptions, only 16 yards. He had an interception in that game. And you look at what the Bills are going to try to do in the passing game. Stephon Diggs is dealing with a back injury. He was all clear on Saturday. I know there was a lot of Bills fans a little bit concerned when he popped up on the injury report on Friday. He said he's all good. It was more of a maintenance deal for an injury that popped up in the Bengals game. He will play on Monday night, but Stephon Diggs does some work out of the slot. Dalton Kincaid is a guy that likes to work over the middle of the field. When you're targeting those guys, this is all of a sudden McMillan, a 2022 UDFA out of East Carolina, that you have to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. Have to be aware of him. You look back at that game, it was Travis Kelce who led the way with 6 receptions for 58 yards, very modest numbers considering that Kansas City offense. But maybe the Bills do try to make this another Dalton Kincaid type of game. Tight end that's really stepped up the past 3 weeks and has shown the ability to catch just about everything thrown his way. Yes, he had a costly fumble last week. He got upended, and then it was just a picture perfect punch out. But he is someone that you want to get the ball in his hands if possible. But as you mentioned, there are guys to look out for on this defense, especially in the back end, that could cause some trouble for Josh Allen and company.
Um, this has been a crazy couple days. I know people were sending me some messages. Hey, where's the preview show? I was in Virginia. My sister's 40th birthday, which I'm sure she's thrilled that I just announced that to the world. It was a fun weekend though. Our entire side of the family, my mom's side, my dad's side, members from both sides kind of met in Virginia. Probably had like 40 people there ish, and completely surprised her. She thought she was going to meet a friend for a brunch, and it was a super cool deal. So I was gone for a couple days, but man, it's crazy. Like I know this is kind of like a side note. It's crazy how fast time flies, doesn't it, Ryan? Like I turned 40 a couple years ago. I'm 41 now. You start celebrating siblings' 40th birthdays. Like, man, I'm getting kind of old here.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. I mean, I'll be 40 next year, and my brother had his 40th a few years ago. So time is pretty crazy in terms of what happens in what feels like a blink of the eye.
Defensively against the Broncos, and where you start with them is a confounding receiver group
Mhm.
because they have a young guy, Marvin Mims, who's a really exciting young player. You have Jerry Jeudy, who at the trade deadline every year, I feel like Bills fans are clamoring for him, but it just hasn't felt like the former first round pick out of Alabama has really found any stability. I feel like he's playing some pretty good football over the last 2 weeks, which maybe this is the ascension point, and we'll see in this game against the Bills defense that is kind of beaten up a bit in their back end. If that ends up being a guy you have to watch out for, Cortland Sutton, I feel like has always been a player that I thought was a really good guy. He's dealt with some injury problems, but how concerning is this group of weapons? And then obviously Javonte Williams, who looks like no worse for the wear coming off of that ACL from last season. He's been really good this year. How do you view this Broncos offense? And you already kind of mentioned Russell Wilson.
Yeah, well, I like their wide receivers. I do. I mean, like you said, I don't disagree with what you said about Jerry Jeudy, but Marvin Mims is someone that came in early on this season and had some good performances. I was reading something saying from Sean Payton saying, don't be surprised if he has a bigger role in this offense soon because he kind of disappeared for a little while. So he is a threat. Jerry Jeudy puts up those modest stats, but 50, 60, 70 yards receiving can hurt you in a game like this. Cortland Sutton has big playability, and we're just talking about how The Bills are banged up in the secondary at safety, and how they're banged up at cornerback. And yes, they should have, they'll have Dane Jackson and Rasul Douglas. But when those guys need breathers, who can you count on to step up there? Can you count on the back end at the safety position? So that's the big worry to me. Javonte Williams is a great running back. Like you said, he hasn't really missed a beat coming off of this injury. But I do feel like the Bills last week, and again, it's a week to week league. I thought they did a nice job against Joe Mixon and company. I thought
Hmm.
Linval Joseph had a nice debut in the middle. He was very stout there in terms of not letting much go by. It helped Ed Oliver. It helped them a lot just in run defense in general. So if you can make this team one dimensional, that would be great for Buffalo. Mind you, again, I have those concerns though on the back end. So if they are one dimensional, going to be throwing the ball. Can these guys step up without some of their key players in attendance or playing in this game?
And to me, like, it's been a bit of a dry spell for the defensive front over the last couple of games after a red hot start without Von Miller. It's almost been like when he got back, how much do you feel like that maybe Von Miller getting back, Daquan Jones going out, like inadvertently took the foot off of the gas pedal for a lot of guys? Like, you're AJ Epinesa, and in those first few weeks, you're needed to be one of the guys that is the driving force. He has a couple good games. He's starting to build on it. And then it seems like Miller getting work back in, and we've seen his production dip just a little bit. I don't know. I think this is a game where defensively, interior on the outside, Cushenberry on the inside plays at center, I believe, for the Broncos. Had a really good game a couple weeks ago. Garrett Boyles, another guy at left tackle. That's going to be a matchup to watch, whether it's Leonard Floyd, Von Miller, AJ Epinesa, Greg Rousseau, whoever it is. Those are matchups you have to win in this game, and you have to make Russell Wilson feel you as a defensive front, and then hope that can lead into turnover, something that just hasn't been happening for this defense.
Yeah, and I think you raised a good point about Von Miller coming in, and maybe it hurts a little bit with the pass rush because AJ Epinesa was playing good football at that time. Greg Rousseau is playing good football. Now, mind you, Rousseau is dealing with an injury. It seems like he's playing through. That's hampering him a little bit. But Von Miller's starting to show signs. I know some fans will deny that, but he's had pressure on 12% of his pass rush reps over the past few weeks. He's looking more like himself. Russell Wilson's a quarterback that does hold the ball a little bit longer than some of the QBs the Bills have seen the past few weeks. So this could be a game where Von Miller looks like himself a little bit more. Maybe he gets a sack. But you lose Daquan Jones in the middle, like you said, around that same time of year. And he was a undersung hero on that defensive line. Played a big factor. You lose him, you lose Milano, you lose a lot essentially when those two guys go down. But it certainly didn't help that you had to give these reps to Von Miller, taking some other guys maybe out of their rotation or out of the fact that they were getting so many reps to warm up to kind of get into that feel for the game. But now I think it could end up paying off for Von Miller and company. Having those extra guys, allowing a guy like Greg Rousseau to maybe limit his reps, let him get better over the course of the next few weeks as well.
Speaking of it paying off, it definitely pays off to be a Shout Buffalo Bills insider, because I've been spending the last couple of days, even though I was in Virginia, chatting back and forth, answering questions, as have you, in the insider line. Ryan, I gave one of our insiders, the full lowdown on the Buffalo weekend. So it goes beyond just Buffalo Bills talk. They want to know where to have pizza, where to have wings, all this kind of stuff. So we're there for you. You can become an insider. Text 716-528-6727. That's 716-528-6727. 2-week free trial, $3.99 a month after that. And the Shout text line is brought to you by Terry C. Byer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street, Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give him a call, 716-852-1234, or check out litrolaw.com. All right, let's get into our keys to the game. One of the keys I feel like is tackling, right? Like, missed tackles lead to sustained drives for an offense that's going to be traveling West Coast to East Coast, looking for any kind of sustained momentum in this game. And so I look at a guy like Terrell Bernard, who's on the, will he, won't he play situation right now. He's questionable. He's still in the concussion protocol. the last we heard. He was in the red non-contact jersey all throughout the week, limited participating in practice, which is good news. Ryan, I think they really are hoping that Bernard can go in this game. It'll be really important to just making sure that in the screen game, in the run game, a guy getting flying around sideline to sideline, being able to tackle. I think Tyrell Dodson had a good game last week. If you're asking him to now come into this game, be the middle linebacker, putting Dorian Williams out there on the outside, we've seen some good moments from him, but obviously some concerning kind of plays over the course of his playing time with tackling.
Yeah, for great point, Matt. For me, what I'm looking for is winning the field position battle. I feel like that is the area where the Bills have struggled the past few weeks, maybe even the majority of the year. But you look back at that Cincinnati game, even the defense holding Cincinnati to 3 second half points in that matchup. They were still getting to about midfield, punting the ball, backing up the Bills deep in their own end. The Bills, if they couldn't score a touchdown, they were kind of getting off the field somewhat quickly. The punts weren't great last week from Sam Martin. It felt like it was a major advantage for Cincinnati in this game. The Bills need to find a way to win the field position battle tomorrow night on Monday Night Football if they want to win this game. If they can get short fields, if they can start on their own 35, 40-yard line on a few drives rather than backed up inside their own 10, I think that's going to be advantageous for this team that can put together scoring drives, but they're having trouble putting together those really long scoring drives, those 80, 90-yard drives, and it's understandable. One penalty can shoot yourself in the foot in that scenario when you have to march down the whole field. So to me, that is my key to the game. The Bills must win the field position battle to win this game.
Yeah, and to me that starts with getting off the field defensively. Like the three and outs. Like to me, that's something that like was a staple of this team over the last couple of years. And I get it. They're at a disadvantage. They're missing some key players on this defense. It's been brought up in the chat several times. Our good buddy Pops Mafia mentioning that Daquan Jones, Matt Milano, Trey White, all huge losses. And he's right on the money with that. You don't replace those guys. They're going to start to try to do that. I think Joseph and Douglas in week 2. I'm really interested to watch those two closely tomorrow night and how much that could potentially be a huge uplifting force for them in this game. Now, I have another key to the game. This is not a Denver Broncos defense that's necessarily good against the run. And I know playing Miami in week 3 is a huge, tall task for any team. But look at these numbers, Ryan. Devin Achan, 18 carries, 203 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Raheem Mostert, 13 carries, 82 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. This is a game where I don't care who's up. If it's Leonard Fournette, if it's Latavius Murray, if it's James Cook, you have to be able to run the football against this team. And the Kansas City Chiefs a couple weeks ago couldn't do it. And that's why they scored 9 points. You have to, I would imagine, and it's a funny talking point because I don't love the idea that the Bills are trying to be something that they're not, right? Like, you're not this expert running team. Like, you shouldn't lean into it. I don't think we're going to look at the box score at the end of this game and see similar numbers with 2 running backs combining for only over 30 carries in a game. I don't think we're going to see that necessarily in this game. But you have to make the carries that you do use, the running backs that you do deploy, you have to make it work in this game against this particular team.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind seeing all 3 backs in this game, bringing up Leonard Fournette for the matchup, having Latavius Murray, having James Cook, those different styles, change of pace. I want to see some design Josh Allen runs because, you throw that in the mix as well, seeing the way that the Broncos have defended the run at times this year, especially early this year to a Miami Dolphins team. There are yards to be had on the ground. So, yeah, implement all of your backs if you can do it. If you feel like Fournette is comfortable enough in this system, elevate him in one of the cornerbacks for this game. Obviously, use Josh Allen's legs. We're seeing it a little bit more, whether it's on, scrambles out of the pocket, design plays. It benefits this team. It helps this team. I know they lost against the Bengals, but you go back to that Tampa Bay game. Him running the ball is what brought up a linebacker on his touchdown pass to Dalton Kincaid that kind of freed up that area for Kincaid to catch the ball and score. When he is a threat with his legs and defenses have to account for it, it adds another completely different wrinkle and headache for opposing defenses to have to try to factor in.
All right, let's do two more things before we get out of here. First of all, player to watch. The one player in this game that you think is the most important for the Bills to have a big performance and a win.
Gosh, that's a great question.
I can
Uh,
start it off if you want to. If you want a
Go
second to
ahead.
think about it, I
Go
just
ahead.
threw that out of you. I'm going to Stephon Diggs. This is a Stephon Diggs game. I know he's dealing with the back injury, but I think you look across the league at, and I like the idea for Cook, Pops Mafia. He's somebody that we kind of probably could have mentioned as well, and I was kind of going that way with the running back point. But I think in this game, Diggs has to eat. I think he's going to end up with 10 plus targets. I think that you want to get him working on some of those crossing patterns too. Like, we saw it last week. I think it was on the third down. It was a short crosser, but some of that deep stuff. Like, I think that it's time for, maybe it's not time yet. And this is kind of like a sub conversation that we could have maybe the next week after the game. I do think that the Bills are probably holding a little bit of stuff back. It's interesting. Tim Graham, our good friend over at The Athletic, put out a piece this week about the limited amount of fun in the Bills offense, the way that it's looked over the last, since I think halfway through last season. And how much do you think, Ryan, the Bills might just be putting all that stuff in their pocket, Ken Dorsey that is, for late December, January, as they pivot into the playoffs and trying to get through this season, keeping Josh Allen as safe as possible while still trying to be efficient, which the numbers suggest they've been. I know that's a dangerous game to play when you're sitting here at 5-4 after 9 games, but I think in a game like this, Stephon Diggs against maybe Patrick Surtain, maybe traveling with him, you need a big performance from your bona fide number one wide receiver.
Yeah, Diggs has to have a big game, as does Dalton Kincaid. As for your question, I don't know. How long can you keep those in your pocket when you're struggling the way that you are?
Right?
I think what was it last week? They tried the flea flicker. Am I thinking of the right game? Either way, the big plays, the surprise plays, they have to try to start bringing them out sooner rather than later if they truly are in the pocket, because this is not a team that's doing enough on either side of the ball. So I don't know if you can necessarily keep them in your pocket. So pivoting to my player to watch, I'm going to go with Leonard Floyd. I could go with any of the pass rushers on this team. I just feel like you have to be able to get home, get pressure on a quarterback that holds the ball longer than some of the QBs that we've seen the past few weeks, Joe Burrows of the world, the Baker Mayfields. This is a quarterback that can be sacked, and I feel like Leonard Floyd, I know he dealt with an illness earlier this week, but when he's been healthy, he has been maybe their most consistent pass rusher. So I'm going to pick him to have a big game for the Bills to win this. Maybe create a turnover or just create enough disruptions where maybe you can get this Broncos team off the field and go back to what I said earlier, win that field position battle.
Devin Singletary today, 30 for 150 and a touchdown on the ground. He had one catch for 11 yards as well, so 161 all-purpose yards. Yeah, man. Alex brings up a great point about Singletary, and a conversation that we might have here pretty soon is the success running backs are having after they leave the Bills. Singletary, Zach Moss this year in Indianapolis. It hasn't been a very banner year for Singletary. He's averaging like 3.4 per carry. But I do think like this might be a career day for him. I gotta look up the numbers, but he looked electric today for a Houston offense that looks electric with a rookie quarterback that's probably in the MVP conversation.
Yeah, and I heard he didn't do that with Buffalo. Well, listen, he didn't have a lot of games where he was given 30 carries either. And Zach Moss was the cowbell in Indy early on this season with Jonathan Taylor dealing with some injuries early on, and now it's more of a split backfield. Opportunity systems, good for both of those guys, but it just wasn't happening in Buffalo. This is not a balanced team, for better or worse. This is not a run first team like the Colts have had to kind of pivot into since losing Anthony Richardson. So, there's a lot of little factors like that that go into it, but obviously very happy for those guys who didn't have the same kind of success here in Buffalo that they're finding now.
All right, prediction time. I mentioned the Bills with the running game this Sunday or Monday night. And I'm going to stick with that. And I think that they are going to find a way to unlock that run game. I think Josh Allen will probably be involved in it a little bit. But I think it comes down, Ryan, to variety in the run game. Like,
Right.
I don't mind the second and 8 shotgun running play as long as it's not the only thing you're doing constantly throughout the game. Sometimes it feels like they lean into that because of the style of their offense, and there's not enough variety to the play calling in the run game. So I'd like to see a little bit more uh, I formation in this game. Maybe running a little bit with Reggie Gilliam out in front. He's been almost erased from this offense. Maybe that's a nice way to kind of bounce back here with the run game and settle this offense, is to get a little bit more aggressive in the run game with your fullback. I think the Bills have played well against Russell Wilson. Remember the Seattle game a couple years ago? And so I think the Bills will get back right. I think 34-21 is my prediction for this one. I think Josh Allen has himself a big game in prime time, and it's been an up and down year on prime time, but historically the Bills played pretty well there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have the Bills winning this one 24-20, a little bit more low scoring. I think that they squeak out a win in prime time on Monday night. I think that they do lean on the run a little bit more based on the fact that you can kind of exploit that against Denver. This is not a team that wants to win the time of possession battle, but if it allows them to extend their drives, to put up some extra points here and there, I think that they're going to do it. They might have a little bit more with James Cook involved, whether it's in the short passing game as well. I see the Bills, though, coming out on top in this one.
All right, if you want to come out on top in your shopping experience, get the most out of your shopping experience, and check out all the amazing benefits you have at the palm of your hand with the Tops Friendly Markets mobile app. Select your preferred store, browse, and shop the weekly ad or by specific department. You can easily locate products at your preferred store with its built-in aisle directory. Enjoy contactless shopping with Tops Grocery Pickup or delivery services. Clip digital coupons directly to your Tops Bonus Plus card. Check out the Tops Markets mobile app today. Ryan Talbot, that's going to do it for us. We are coming back in, what do we got here? 32 hours for the Monday night post-game edition. We'll be live sometime around 12:30, 1 a.m. Join us here on YouTube, over on Facebook, or on Twitter. Hit that like button, subscribe before you go. And we'll see you then. Bills Broncos, going to be fun. Take care.